lot of the stories in the handwriting itself. You can see like chaos, you can see pain, you can see like sometimes those hopeful thoughts come in the midst of like these big loud screaming things.
One person's story of recovery that has helped many more.
That story touched people around the world and created an online community of hope.
Millions of young people talking about mental health for the first time.
Quite literally, people's lives are being saved.
I didn't grow up in an abusive home. I had parents who loved me, but there was the internal struggles and things that I couldn't name and I couldn't explain why they were there.
The first time that I ever cut myself, I was 12 years old. I didn't really even know what it was. Everything kind of came to a head for me. I got stuck in this situation where I just didn't know what to do anymore. I couldn't stop cutting. I tried to kill myself again. I tried to get hit by a car. Then finally, my friends came and they picked me up and we went to the treatment center. And I get there and they basically told me they couldn't accept me because I had too much in my system and they'd found the cuts on my arms and they wouldn't accept me. They told me to come back in 5 days because the chances of me having a seizure and not making it through the detox were too great. So that was when I spent 5 days at my friend's home.
We tried to keep her safe. We tried to keep her smiling.
You know, they all showed up and took turns like sitting with me, and everyone's doing their best, trying to make sure, you know, we're in shifts and she's not alone.
2 of the 5 nights we took her to shows. We ended up standing on the side of the stage, watching one of her favorite bands. Today it's one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, I got to see Thrice. That was awesome. Awesome.
This was all new to me, like to have conversations like this, but I remember just being impressed. Like there was a lot of pain, but there was also this incredibly brilliant, intelligent, creative, hilarious person.
I kept a razor on me just so that I knew that this was entirely my choice. It was symbolic to me to hold on to this thing of like the option. The very last night, it was like, you know what? I understand and I know what I'm doing and I don't need this anymore and I don't need the option.
She gave me her razor blade on the last night.
And then I went to treatment.
I found myself moved by meeting Renee and by staying up late 5 nights in a row and getting to know her. And I didn't want to forget. I didn't want to go back to normal. I asked her what she thought about the possibility of telling her story.
I didn't really think about how many people might see it or read it. It was just, it felt authentic to me. It resonated with me. And I kind of have the tendency to just, if something feels good, if it lines up with me, then I kind of just say yes and show up and then panic later.
And I sat down and wrote this story. Kept coming back to this title that was a bit awkward. It was way too long to be a title. To write Love on Her Arms.
She had taken a razor blade to her left arm and written the word fuck up.
It was a goal. It was the idea of believing something better for our friend's life.
This was the beginning of social media, and it was like the moment of MySpace. I posted the story as a MySpace blog, and then people began to respond.
I've struggled with depression and anxiety myself.
I thought nobody understood what I was going through.
I just felt numb, and I felt like I couldn't feel anything.
This was so many other people's stories too.
I started to self-harm.
I'm someone who deals with depression, and I have thought of suicide before.
It means a lot to me personally because it's something I wish I'd had as a kid. You know, something to tell me, hold on, it'll be okay.
20 years ago, there were a lot less people talking about mental health. There clearly was a desire among a ton of people to be able to talk about mental health, to be able to talk about suicide. Could I do more? Could we do more? And so the idea for the t-shirt was a fundraiser, you know, that someone could buy and we could use that money to help pay for her treatment. And then I remember ordering 100 t-shirts, which felt like an ambitious number. I believe it was March 30th, 2006, Florida Atlantic University. And it's the Nothing Is Sound tour for Switchfoot.
I've known Jamie for a while. The very first To Write Love on Her Arms shirt, he actually opened the box at a Switchfoot show. I just happened to be there and thought, oh man, this is great. What a great story. Because I had the whole story printed on the inside of the shirt. Put the shirt on and said, do you mind if I talk about this from stage tonight and wear it?
They're playing to like 3,000 people that night. And John wears this shirt, log into the MySpace page, and there are messages and comments from people who had been at the show. And then I remember the next night, Switchfoot's in Jacksonville. More people find us, people from North Florida. And then Dion Rexroth plays bass in Amberlin, wore the shirt basically every night for months. And at first, anything from outside of Florida was super exciting. Like, what, this is incredible. And then after a couple weeks, it's other countries.
When all of these things I struggled with were isolation and being disconnected and being, alone. It was the complete opposite of those things. And sharing what could be shameful or harmful was giving healing and hope to people.
Cornerstone, Florida, here in Orlando. I believe it's May 2006. So we had a free booth, and it was like, okay, why not? We'll try it. Seems cool. See what happens. Young Hayley Williams from the band Paramore. She came to the booth by herself, wanted a t-shirt, knew about it, was all in. Like, it was personal for her.
Sometimes it feels like the world's kind of falling apart, and a lot of people our age feel like there's nothing they can really do about it.
I'm at the back of the crowd and I'm watching, and I remember there's a moment where she says, if you do nothing else today at this festival, please go check out To Write Love on Her Arms. And our booth was really close to the stage. I think she pointed at it. And then at the end of the set, I basically just watched a good percentage of the crowd go from in front of the stage to our little booth.
I saw them at a booth and I got to get to know who they were. On the inside, I was struggling a lot with this idea of what's the point of life? What's the purpose? Why am I here? It wasn't until I got to Warped Tour and I heard people sharing their stories at the To Write Love on Her Arms booth that I really felt like I could say the words out loud that I wanted to die. And that was like the first time I was able to tell somebody. Yeah, it was definitely a turning point for me. I went home and I talked to my parents about it, and we're able to come to a point where it was like, okay, let's get you into therapy, let's get you some help. I'm lucky that I'm here today because some people aren't. I have lost a handful of people in my life to suicide, and I never thought that I would even make it to 25, and I'm 31. I'm gonna be 32 next month, and that's crazy for me to think.
It felt like people were taking a first step. I wanted to help people take another step toward connection, toward treatment, toward counseling, toward not being alone in their pain. So there's this transition from trying to help Renee, one person, to trying to help a whole bunch of people, starting with the messages, waiting for a response in the inbox. And so began to build a team.
Early on, there were, I think the cops got called because there were people for weeks on end camping in the backyard. You got 12, 14 people, and they're like, you can't do that here.
We sit at our table and we start responding to messages.
And we're compiling all these resources for people in their local areas to get help.
I always think of Chad, who for almost all 20 years, he just keeps going to the next place.
How long have you all been doing this? We've been an organization for about 4.5 years now.
Here I am, 7 years later.
We just turned 10 back in March. We started 13 years ago.
For the past 17 years, this has been my home, either this van or these festival grounds. It's been about meeting people where they naturally come together.
I was like, wow, this should become a national movement too. So it was like, sure, bring your 10 by 10 tent, hop on the bus, and let's see what happens.
As a team, we're spread out in so many different places. Music tours, festivals, college campuses, and simultaneously the story and the t-shirts took on lives of their own.
My name is Jamie, and I work on a project called To Write Love on Her Arms.
TWLOHA.com. That's a website.
Crowd control, that's a big part of what we do. And it wasn't even across their mind that the congestion of the nonprofit booths.
The recipient of the $1 million grant is To Write Love on Her Arms.
Everywhere we look, athletes, musicians, actors are giving us permission to talk about our mental health because they are talking about theirs.
To Write Love on Her Arms.
That's how stigma goes away.
It's To Write Love on Her Arms Day.
To Write Love on Her Arms Day.
You write love on your arm.
The group's MySpace, Facebook, and Twitter responses number in the hundreds of thousands.
Over the past 4.5 years, we've had the privilege to read and respond to over 180,000 messages.
The most important thing about To Write Love on Our Arms is there may be no other way to reach these young people.
This is amazing, but at the same time, there's a weight to it. Like, the stakes couldn't be higher.
A troubling new report today. Cases of depression have been surging over the past few years. 20% of adolescents report a history of depression. 50% go undiagnosed. And of the ones who get diagnosed, about half receive the appropriate treatment.
These are real people. There are lives in the balance. These are people struggling. But then you have to organize, you have to add structure, and I'm not built for that.
I joined To Write Love on Our Arms kind of as like a summer job. The story we were given as teenagers or even as young people, like, don't talk about your mental health or don't talk about the things that are hard. We reject that. We can change this conversation that it doesn't have to be like this. I would field hundreds of applications from Australia, the UK, all over the world, really. There was just a huge number of people just saying, like, how do I help? I really just wanted to use people's unique gifts and talents to really support and make sense of the organization. How do we really build this thing to not just meet this moment, but to have like a legacy? Insurance companies weren't even paying for mental health care, so we were saying, we'll pay for that. 1-800-SUICIDE was running out of funding, and we were able to pay, the phone bill to keep that running. The Heavy and Light Tour was really special. It's a tour specifically designed for people to come and connect with mental health resources.
To Write Love on Her Arms literally saved my life. I was 22. I had plotted out that I was going to jump off of a bridge and take my life that night. But out of the corner of my eye, there's the House of Blues Orlando, and I see this massive line. Stop. Let's go see what's going on at the House of Blues.
Look at the person next to you. Look at the people all around you. Every single person here is sharing in this with you. You are not alone.
I go in and it's just this massive, I call it like a massive therapy session. I've experienced a lot of really significant challenges with mental illness in my life. It's now called functional neurological symptom disorder. I was the only person in New York State that was diagnosed with it when I got diagnosed. The kids at school were so cruel. I had a girl slam my knees together and make them bleed because she didn't believe that I couldn't feel my legs. Everybody else had a place that they belonged, and suddenly I no longer belonged. And here I am hugging a stranger. But I felt that love in that hug like you feel it from when your mom hugs you. This wasn't a concert. This wasn't a band that came to play. This was like an experience. Holy shit, this just saved my life.
There's not a single person at our organization within the movement who doesn't have a personal connection with these issues. All of the sudden, so much of my personal story and my family's story made a lot more sense to me.
Here comes August.
Right after my first son was born, postpartum depression, like it hit me hard. Feeling like, am I even doing this right? Like maybe he's better off without me. Like my sister pulled me aside one day actually, and she's like, you don't seem like you. And I wept because I was like, you can know all of the signs and symptoms, but like sometimes it takes like a really compassionate person to say, hey, I noticed. COVID revealed to a lot of people, I think for the first time, what it felt like to be faced with a mental health challenge.
And I was pretty much isolated.
Everything just feels overwhelming.
It's been hard, man.
The impact of isolation, the impact of the stress, you know, losing incomes, like those community spaces that we all so valued have been really, they're really lost, you know? All of these people were isolated, but at the same time, like we have this online community that's showing up for each other. I think right now, the way that we're seeing this moment is like encouraging people to reconnect to those places. And I think it's that cultural moment where you go to your favorite festival and you see your favorite bands, and like the response at the booth while we're at festivals is just overwhelming. It feels like the early days again.
Coming up on 2 years ago, November 25th of 2023, I lost my little brother Finn to suicide. And that was a very traumatic and pivotal moment in my life. I realized that maybe I do have a purpose, or there is something I can do to help and carry my little brother forward with me in those actions. One thing that I want you to be sure you know, though, is this one right here. So if you scan that and put in your zip code, it'll show you how you can find affordable and accessible mental health care options all across the country. A lot of times, people don't have the opportunity to talk about these things at home or with family.
This has saved my friend Ashley's life and also my life.
Mom took her life 5 years ago, so I always stop.
It's been very healing in its own right for me.
This movement for like 20 years now or something, it has to continue on. It has to keep getting bigger and growing. People are putting down razor blades. People are, you know, putting down pill bottles and making a new plan to call a therapist to get help. And that's really all because of To Write Love.
To be able to look back at 20 years and to see the people who are coming, you know, in their community, the catalyst, like the communal healers.
I decided to become a licensed specialist in school psychology and to be there to help children get the support that they needed.
I've been in mental health treatment for over 2 decades. I wrote a book so that I can take that information and share it with everybody else.
I get to be a mom to the most wonderful little soul on this planet, you know. I get to have play and curiosity and joy.
Hang on, all this is so different. So the To Write Love on Her Arms story was written in that room, that above the garage there. It's amazing to be here 20 years later. There are people who are literally alive because of what can be traced back to this place, you know.
Healing is like an evolving process. It's not a stagnant thing. It's not a destination you get to. You don't get to wrap your story up in a perfect little bow at the end. Like, you're alive, so there's still more to figure out. There's still more healing to be done.
This conversation is more important than ever, you know? Like, there are thousands of people out there fighting for this thing because people need to know that they're not alone.
Our shame, our sadness, when we deal with them alone, we can't see. You need other people to reflect that light back to you.
We hear from thousands of people each year who need help, and the #1 reason they don't get mental health care is because they can't afford it. Since 2006, To Write Love on Her Arms has invested over $4.7 million into treatment and recovery scholarships to change this. The best way to join the movement is to become a monthly donor. At just $15 a month, you'll help 4 people access mental health care this year. This is more important than ever. And if you or someone you know is struggling, it's okay to ask for help. There are resources and people who want to see your story continue. Together, we'll make hope and help possible. Learn more today at TWLOHA.com/get involved.